Who was Ismail Haniyeh? Why all the fuss? Recently, the political leader of Hamas was assassinated, killed. Was he a terrorist? Or a moderate leader? A nice guy? Are Hamas terrorists? Or noble resistance fighters? If Hamas is a terrorist group, is killing their leader a terrorist act or a good thing? And is this really an escalation from war or a dangerous new phase, as the media calls it? And why is the media ignoring these basic questions? Stick around. Let's discuss. Welcome to the channel. My name is James. I have a large following on X, a channel also called Mideast Madness. But X is a little bit dry, a lot of writing and reading, so I decided to try a video format, more pics and vids, and maybe more fun. Here we'll discuss and analyze news from the Middle East, 100% biased, I promise. My opinion only, but that's okay. Most mainstream media news is also 100% biased. They're just pretending they're not. I will prove that here in this video. In these videos, I will be asking questions that I cannot always answer. Maybe you can. Leave a comment. I want to learn from you. At the least, I hope these videos raise questions to make us think. Okay, on July 31st, in Iran, over 1,000 miles away from Israel, a leader of Hamas, Ismail Haniyeh, was assassinated. The first question is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, how do countries view Hamas? Hamas is a designated terrorist organization, designated by dozens of countries, including the US, the UK, Canada, Australia, Japan, Israel, the EU with its 27 countries, and the OAS with its 34 countries. Terrorists typically are defined as those who intentionally kill civilians to further their cause. In every war, civilians die. We all know that, but not intentionally. That intention is considered truly immoral. So terrorism is evil. October 7th, we all saw terrorism as hundreds of music festival goers in Israel were intentionally killed. They were civilians. They were killed by thousands of Hamas Gazans. So, according to dozens of countries, Hamas are terrorists, the bad guys. Only in comics do good guys conceal their faces by wearing masks. In the real world, no. So what does the news media say of Haniyeh? I have read many articles on Haniyeh's assassination, but not one says he was a terrorist or even the leader of a terrorist organization. None I've read. They ignore that fact, and it's a very big fact. That would be the first sentence I wrote if I worked in a news organization. They'd probably fire me, of course, but I would write, terrorist leader killed, or leader of terrorist group Hamas assassinated. Facts, facts. Many of the articles on Haniyeh's killing are long articles. I even search for the word terrorist in each article, and I can't even find it. In a few, the word terrorist does come up, but only to describe Israel's act. Usually that's a response to the killing from the usual Israel haters. Iran, Turkey, Qatar, who are the extremely biased news. The list is very long. ABC, CNN, MSNBC, the Associated Press, New York Times, Washington Post, Reuters, the BBC. All were reputable news organizations when I was young, many years ago. Sadly, they are simply biased propaganda now against Israel. It is extreme and it's obvious. It's also strange, as Israel is the only country in the Middle East that has freedom of the press. And no, Al Jazeera is not the press, it's propaganda. How can one tell? I'll tell you soon. You may wonder, where can one go to read balanced news about Israel? In my opinion, the Jerusalem Post is good. It's online and it's in English. Every day some articles support Israel and other articles are against Israel. It's a mix. That mix means it is real news. Al Jazeera is 100% against Israel. 100% bias in one direction is what defines propaganda, regardless of whether you call yourself a news network or not. Interesting fact about the Jerusalem Post. For 20 years before 1950, the Jerusalem Post was called the Palestine Post. Why didn't they change their name in 1950 to the Israel Post? I don't know. Maybe they thought that the new fledgling state of Israel wouldn't survive long surrounded by so many enemy Arab countries. So they went with the safe choice, Jerusalem Post. If Hamas are designated bad guys, terrorists, the kind who kill 1,200 people in one day and take babies as hostages, if they are that bad, then killing their leader must be a good thing. But how would anyone know that by reading all these news articles? Their agenda distorts the news by leaving off super important facts. All we can do is laugh. And Washington Post keeps emailing me every week to join their subscription service. No thanks. BBC News, soon after the Haniyeh death, actually called him a, quote, moderate and pragmatic leader.
I mean, as you were saying, Ismail Haniyeh was seen as being the sort of more pragmatic, more moderate face of Hamas when compared to the hardliners like Yahya Sinwar.
Can one be a, quote, moderate and pragmatic terrorist? That interview was breaking news, and, as usual, almost all the media copied the buzzwords. Reuters also called Haniyeh a, quote, moderate leader. So now killing 1,000 plus Israelis is viewed as moderate. I don't want to know what they think extreme is. And here is an ABC interview with an Australian expert.
So he's played a really essential part of Hamas's strategy, both militarily and particularly political. And he's been known as a moderate voice and a pragmatic voice in Hamas politics.
And Sky News, as well as The Guardian, broke the story of the man, quote, considered a very moderate leader for Hamas. Did any news group discuss the leader having lived in a luxury hotel in Qatar these past 7 years? Qatar is over 1,000 miles away from Gaza. Haniyeh was worth billions of dollars, US dollars, over $4 billion US dollars. Before he entered politics, Haniyeh was a high school teacher. Does he sound like any high school teacher you had when you were young? I may have had worse. Apparently, this high school teacher really knew how to save those pennies and nickels. $4 billion worth. That's $4,000 million. I am sure he earned all his billions lawfully in Gaza by being a caring leader of poor people. He led Hamas for 10 years, building and importing thousands and thousands of rockets, all aimed at Israel. And he dug hundreds of miles of tunnels for smuggling in weapons and to hold future hostages. That's his only legacy. A real nice guy. But you would not know that reading the mainstream media news. To them, he's just Mr. Pragmatic, the penny saver. Here is Haniyeh in 2007, 2 years after Israel pulled out from Gaza completely. No Israeli has lived in Gaza since 2005. Listen to how he dodges the questions of whether Hamas might renounce violence or recognize Israel.
Launched an appeal for a long-term ceasefire with Israel. In an exclusive interview with Euronews, he also urged Europe to play an active role in resolving the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Israel's Prime Minister Ehud Olmert says that they are ready to talk if Hamas accepts the quartet's conditions and the Israeli right to exist.
They'd said the same thing to the PLO. Nothing was done for 15 years, and the Palestinian aspirations have never been realized.
Let's suppose Olmert is sincere this time.
Hopes and politics are not the same thing.
If Israel offers a hand to Hamas and asks Hamas to give up violence, can Hamas recognize Israel?
تخلت حماس عن استخدام القوة وإذا كان هناك رغبة ما بالاعتراف ضمنيا بالدولة العبرية.
The Israeli position is arrogant. They're always imposing conditions, and the conditions are unfair.
Is there any possibility of recognizing Israel?
إذا توفرت شروط ما.
First of all, let Israel recognize Hamas.
But there's a dilemma.
Israel is an occupying country, occupying land and the Palestinian people.
Did you notice Haniyeh asked Israel to recognize Hamas? This was 2007. Israel had recognized Hamas for many years as the terrorists they are. Even the US recognized Hamas as terrorists as early as 1997. The Hamas Charter of 1988 calls for a 100% Muslim Middle East. No Israel, no Jewish homeland, and by any means necessary. What? No sharing? That's not very nice. By the way, an interesting story. In 2006, this British newspaper discusses 3 of Haniyeh's sisters who married Arab Israelis and thereby became citizens of Israel, where they live to this day. Can you imagine Prime Minister Netanyahu's sisters marrying Hamas bad guys and living in Gaza as Gazan citizens? That might make an interesting movie plot one day. So some Gazans live in Israel as citizens. They married in. Since 2005, any Jew living in Gaza would be dead. By the way, if you enjoy this video, please like and subscribe now. I'll be making many more videos, unless, of course, peace breaks out throughout the Middle East. But you can take the risk that that won't happen. Subscribe now to my channel. This 2015 article says Haniyeh's mother-in-law was medically treated in Israel for cancer. Maybe Jewish doctors saved her life, and that is why Haniyeh hates Israel so much. Does anybody really like their mother-in-law? The article says, quote, while Israel considers Hamas a terrorist group, Gaza residents, even those with ties to Hamas, are authorized to cross the border on a humanitarian basis, end quote. The article then says, quote, last November, Haniyeh's granddaughter received treatment in Israel for an infection. Will the media ever mention this information? No, but now you know it. The stories of Haniyeh's family are reminiscent of the doctors saving the life of Sinwar, the Hamas leader in Gaza, who is still in hiding. Whoa, but I thought Israelis, as described on X, are all evil child killers. That's so strange. Here's Haniyeh again, just after October 7th, discussing his favorite topic, other people's blood. In Gaza, of course, not his own blood, while he stays safely far, far away in Qatar. Enjoy.
كما قلت وفي كل مرة أكرر إن دماء الأطفال والنساء والشيوخ لا أقول تستصرخكم، بل نحن الذين نحتاج هذه الدماء لكي توقظ فينا روح الثورة، لكي توقظ فينا العناد، لكي توقظ فينا التحدي والسير إلى الأمام.
So killing an evil terrorist leader is probably a good thing for the world. Why no support from the media? Nobody wants a celebration, but this assassination should be described by the press as the long overdue demise of an evil, corrupt ruler. Only a real Israel hater would think otherwise, and most of the media appears to be just that. Of course, the main financial sponsor of Hamas, Iran, went to the UN Security Council, and almost all the 15 member states condemned the assassination. Why? Because most of the UN Security Council hates Israel. They know Hamas are terrorists, but they consider them very useful terrorists. That is the sad, clown world state of the UN Security Council. Was this killing really a deadly escalation, as almost all the media news outlets claim? All these same news outlets wrote stories just 10 months ago that Israel promised to kill all Hamas leaders wherever they are, quote unquote, wipe them off the face of the earth, end quote, for what they did October 7. I don't think that view has changed in the slightest. But these news groups, ABC, Washington Post, Reuters, etc., they do not believe anything Israel says. Whatever Hamas says, whatever the terrorists claim, they believe immediately. One can't make this up. Whatever country you're from, pretend for a moment that neighbors crossed your border and killed 1,200 people in one day, and promised to do it repeatedly. Would you let their leadership survive? If you say yes, my greatest respect to you and your ability to forgive. You are a saint. The take-home message of this video is Hamas are terrorists, designated as such by dozens of countries. They are really bad guys. They intentionally kill civilians. Killing any of their leaders is good news, a wonderful event, and should be applauded. Most media news and the UN Security Council are a shameful disgrace. Their anti-Israel bias makes them support pure evil. Also, there is no escalation, as the media claims. It is a time of war. The assassination sent a strong message to Iran, who has been fighting a proxy war with Israel for decades. Which takes us to our next video. Iran promised, quote unquote, severe punishment for Israel, as does Hezbollah in Lebanon. Let's discuss that and the Ring of Fire next video. No, not the Lord of the Rings, the Ring of Fire. It's something different. We'll discuss completely next video. See you there. Cheers.